Charles and Martin have disappeared. I was given directions to a bus station locker where I found this recording. I'm going to show it to you now, while at the same time uploading it to the hard drive.
Do not be afraid, my friend. My form and image here on Earth has simply been a disguise. Much like your perception of reality, my appearance has always been a facade. My age has made me as weak and as tired as you, Charles, and I can no longer maintain my human form. That is why I must leave. When we return to Yitiga, your cancer will be gone. But first, we must finish our transmission. All tyrannies follow progressions, and make no mistake, my planets had become tyrannies. They were cleverly disguised for a long time, but in order to subjugate the entirety of both planets and to complete the endgame, the Vulcene had to reveal themselves. Now you and I would be quite happy, in essence, owning a planet. But you and I are not the Vulcene. We do not think like the Vulcene. The actions and programs that the Vulcene implemented were as brilliant as they were cold-blooded. They were the workings of an organized crime syndicate, with the overriding mentality of a psycho killer. Generation after generation, through the acquisition of countries and empires and the databasing of knowledge, the Vulcene sculpted away at the art of tyranny and what would become known as full-spectrum dominance. The earliest powerful people used brutality alone to enslave their farm animals. Then the elites learned that a ruling class of farmers and owners would serve and protect them. In addition to the ruthless brutes of enforcers and slave hunters, they added a propagandizing class of intellectuals, holy men, and artisans. Eventually, the elites learned that the serfs would be much more productive and easy to control if they believed themselves to be free. The serf, thought by the elite to be nothing more than a farm animal, was deceived into believing that he had freedom of choice. He could leave the farm and go to a new farm, but he could never own the farm. In fact, all of the owners of the farms were simply managers. They could be replaced at any time. Of course, with the passing of centuries, all of the farms were eventually owned by members of the Vulcene families. Your United Nations is more appropriately entitled United Farms. When the age of industrial production arose, comfort and convenience became products to be purchased. Credit was issued to the serfs, and at the end of the working day, a climate-controlled house with food and electronic gadgets awaited the worker. The farm animal was simply given a softer stall in which to sleep. His financial burden could never be repaid. Still, this looked and felt like progress. After all, on the farms across the waves, the stalls were filthy and there was never enough food to feed the family. What the serf didn't realize was that scientific advances were being withheld. The energy that provided for his comfort and convenience was plentiful and cheap. The thick black fluid that the elite extracted from beneath his feet was plentiful and replenishing, and yet its production was bottlenecked to create shortages, and therefore it was made into a most valuable currency. On top of that, solar collectors and wind turbines were fine-tuned and could have provided renewable energy for everyone without being chained to the elite's power grid. But these were warehoused away from view as if they did not exist. Furthermore, energy sources that the common man could not fathom were developed using reverse engineering from extraterrestrial visitors to our planets, and these remain underground in secret military facilities. In short, dirty and expensive energy was provided for the serf in exchange for his servitude. In addition, Thousands of years of knowledge about our health and the natural cures and remedies for ailments were suppressed and banned by the foundations and industries that came to control all of the doctors and hospitals and medications and procedures. Nutrition and a proper balance of vital vitamins and minerals, as well as protein and a non-sedentary lifestyle, will provide most everyone with a disease-free life. However, the pharmaceutical and hospital industry required patients, consumers, or specimens, whichever way you want to put it. Doctors were required to have a license. A license is a dog collar that the state requires of its serfs to perform functions that would otherwise be an innate freedom. In order to dispense medications and perform procedures on people or animals, and therefore receive payment in exchange, a doctor had to advocate pharmaceutical flu vaccines instead of informing a fellow being of the fact that the proper amount of vitamin D in the winter will prevent the flu. The myriad of vaccines that were pressured and forced upon the people grew with each year. Not inconsequentially, the amount of childhood autism and cancer grew with each year as well. The Vulcene completely controlled the health industry and profited from a population that grew sicker and more diseased with each year that passed. The food that once provided the essential vitamins and minerals for a healthy life was now contaminated with chemicals, processed, and preserved, and therefore missing many of the key building blocks it once contained naturally. In addition, most food was either intentionally or by natural cross-pollination contaminated or infected with genetically modified organisms. In a very dramatic example here on Earth, the chemical company that created the defoliant that the US military sprayed on the jungles of Southeast Asia, and as a consequence, poisoned the soil and the people of the region, leaving behind cancer and devastating birth defects, is now the company that controls the terminating genetically modified seeds that now infect the entire planet. Their seeds contain fertilizers and insecticides. Over 150 chemicals could be found in most municipal water supplies. Here on Earth, fluoride, a toxic poison that the Russians used in the gulags and the Nazis used in the concentration camps to make the prisoners complacent or easy to control, is now dumped into most water supplies. This waste product, called fluoride, is purchased from industries. These industries would be heavily fined for dumping these toxins into a river. The uranium and the mercury found in water supplies are directly related to the extraction that produces the fluoride. In short, the Vulcene used their tax-free foundations to pay scientists and propagandists to develop a full-spectrum system of drugging and poisoning of the population, which was then sold as healthcare, clean water, and miracle food. In actuality, it was a system of slow kill, drain the wallet, concentration camp murder. But this wasn't enough for the Vulcene. The Vulcene came to believe that their bloodlines made them a separate species from the common man. They believed with the emergence of robotic machines, the common man would no longer be needed to serve them. They believed the resources that they had literally stolen from all of the other inhabitants of the planets were precious and theirs not to share. The Vulcene also believed that science would give them life extension technology, and that through merging with robotics, they could live forever. Obviously, the scientists' advances to extend life could not be shared with the billions of people that the Vulcene eventually intended to eliminate. In fact, the Vulcene used their government-paid scientists to present credible-sounding science. Many people had now come to trust science instead of deities, and so governments used this new trust to manipulate populations into believing whatever fear factor they were currently selling. So in accelerating fashion, the tyranny of control and slow kill was becoming the ideology of fast kill and mass extermination. The programs already in place continued, such as the aerosol spraying of the population from the air, the poisoned vaccines, water, food, soaps, lotions, plastics, baby food, and children's toys, as well as the weather weapons that created drought and floods, and towers that disrupted natural vibrations on the planets. But the darkest, most insidious science continued within heavily guarded military installations. Devastating chemical weapons of all kinds were developed, and the dispersal mechanisms were perfected. However, the ultimate weapons were the biological weapons, which combined viruses from different species to create almost certain death for all of the population, except for those who would be safely housed underground. Full-spectrum dominance was almost completely installed. Government camps were set up to detain and sort populations. Sporting games and reality TV shows, as well as the worship of celebrities, kept the drug populace idle and uninvolved. Race, skin color, religion, gender, sexual persuasion, political affiliations, and disparate incomes were used to keep the people divided and unaware of the real enemy. The government school system created an increasingly uninformed and dumbed-down youth prepared only to serve the system. The young were programmed to believe that human beings were the enemy of the environment, and that their breath was a toxin that had to be taxed. The space program and the exploration of space was a ploy used to cover for a massive military operation to deploy weapons that pointed back towards the planet's surface. Drug laws were enacted and brutally enforced in order to incarcerate millions. For-profit prisons were stocked with innocent people who used natural plants to self-medicate. On top of that, government intelligence agencies shipped in the drugs and provided the distribution in the first place. All communications, travel, and financial transactions were thoroughly tracked and databased by the Vulcene's government agents. Drones watched everything from the skies. The Vulcene replaced a war of what you would call capitalism versus communism with a war of terror against all of the population. Government intelligence agencies created an organization of fighters from an opposing religion, provided them with weapons, and used the media to paint them as dark, hateful, secretive, and bent on mayhem and ceaseless murder of the civilized population. Once the seeds were sown into the people's collective consciousness, intelligence agencies flew transport ships into the tallest buildings and exploded them to the ground on worldwide television. It was immediately blamed on the intelligence-created, dark, and mysterious terror group. This false flag terror event and several subsequent murderous bombings throughout the world were then used to change the laws in order to create a state of torture, surveillance, black-clad, heavily armed police, checkpoints, strip searches, constant fear, and perpetual war. In order to protect the populace from a manufactured enemy, the people were treated as criminals and forced to give up all of their freedoms. Every facet was now in place. It was at this point that my planet of Yitiga and the twin planet of Erfatu took opposing forks in the road and changed their courses of history forevermore. Those who wish to keep this knowledge from the people of Earth are closing in on us.